Sarah Chen stood in her cramped apartment surrounded by towers of cardboard boxes, plastic containers filled with bottle caps, and bags overflowing with old magazines while her neighbors whispered in the hallway about the hoarding problem in Unit 3B. She wasn't a hoarder, not really. She just couldn't bring herself to throw anything away because somewhere deep inside, she believed everything had potential, everything could be useful someday, even if she couldn't quite explain how or why. Her husband Michael had left 2 years ago, tired of living in what he called a junkyard, tired of explaining to friends why they couldn't have people over, tired of arguing about why they needed 17 broken radios or boxes of mismatched buttons. Now it was just Sarah and her 4-year-old daughter Emma in the 2-bedroom apartment that felt smaller every day as Sarah's collections grew, spilling from closets into living spaces, creeping across floors and climbing up walls. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning when Mrs. Rodriguez from the building management knocked on the door with a formal notice. Other tenants had complained about items blocking the hallway, about the smell of old paper and dust, about concerns for the child living in those conditions. Sarah read the notice with trembling hands. They had 30 days to clear the violations or face eviction, 30 days to prove she could provide a suitable home for Emma or risk a visit from Child Protective Services. That night, Sarah sat on the floor of Emma's bedroom, the only room she'd managed to keep relatively clear, and cried while her daughter slept peacefully, clutching a stuffed rabbit that was one of the few new things in their home. She knew she needed help, but couldn't afford therapy, couldn't afford a professional organizer, could barely afford their rent and Emma's daycare on her salary as a grocery store cashier. The next morning, Sarah called in sick to work and started the overwhelming task of sorting through her collections, trying to decide what could go. But every item she picked up came with a memory or a justification. This jar of buttons came from her grandmother's sewing kit. These magazines had recipes she wanted to try. These broken electronics could be fixed and donated, couldn't they? Emma wandered out of her room, still in her pajamas, and found her mother sitting in the middle of the chaos, surrounded by half-empty garbage bags and looking defeated. "Mommy sad?" Emma asked, climbing into Sarah's lap, despite the clutter around them. Sarah hugged her daughter and tried to smile. "Mommy just has to clean up, sweetheart. We have too many things." Emma looked around at the piles with her big brown eyes and said something that made Sarah's heart ache. "People say our home is yucky." Sarah pulled her daughter closer. "I know, baby. I'm going to fix it. I promise." That weekend, Sarah's sister Jennifer came over to help, taking one look at the apartment and barely hiding her shock at how bad things had gotten. "Sarah, this is serious. You can't live like this. Emma can't live like this," Jennifer said, her voice a mix of concern and frustration. They worked all day Saturday, filling trash bags and boxes for donation, and Jennifer kept asking the same question. "Do you really need this? When will you actually use this?" And Sarah found herself defending each item, until Jennifer finally snapped, "You're choosing junk over your daughter, over having a real life. Can't you see that?" The words stung because they were true, or at least partly true. But Sarah couldn't explain the anxiety that gripped her chest when she thought about throwing things away, the voice in her head that insisted she'd regret it, that she'd need these things someday. By Sunday evening, they'd made a small dent, but Jennifer had to leave, exhausted and frustrated, making Sarah promise to keep working on it, to really commit to change. Monday morning, Sarah dropped Emma at daycare, and the director, Mrs. Patterson, pulled her aside with a concerned expression. "Emma mentioned you're doing some spring cleaning at home. That's wonderful. And I wanted to let you know if you need any support or resources, we have information about family services." Sarah felt her face burn with embarrassment, realizing the daycare staff probably knew about her problem, probably talked about her, probably worried about Emma. That afternoon, when Sarah picked up Emma, her daughter was unusually quiet on the walk home, clutching a drawing she'd made in class. When they got inside, Emma stood in the middle of the living room, still holding her picture, and looked at a pile of old silk scarves Sarah had collected from thrift stores over the years. Scarves she'd planned to turn into something beautiful but never had. Emma walked over to the scarves, touched one gently, and suddenly the dingy yellowed silk began to shimmer, the fabric transforming before Sarah's eyes into vibrant emerald green, looking brand new, looking expensive. Sarah blinked hard, certain she was seeing things, certain the stress was making her hallucinate. But when she bent down to examine the scarf, it was real. The transformation was real. The fabric now felt like high-quality silk that could cost hundreds of dollars. "Emma, what did you do?" Sarah whispered. But her daughter just smiled and touched another scarf, this one shifting from faded pink to a gorgeous sapphire blue with an almost luminescent quality. Sarah's hands shook as she picked up both scarves. They weren't just clean or refreshed. They were fundamentally different, transformed into something valuable, something that looked like it belonged in an expensive boutique. Over the next few days, Sarah watched in amazement as Emma's ability became clearer. Whenever her daughter touched something old or broken or worthless with intention, with that particular focused expression on her small face, the item would transform into something valuable. A chipped ceramic bowl became a perfect piece of vintage pottery, cracked leather shoes became pristine designer footwear, tarnished costume jewelry became what looked like genuine precious metals and stones. Sarah tested it carefully, not wanting to pressure Emma, but needing to understand. She'd place an item near her daughter, and sometimes Emma would touch it and sometimes she wouldn't. And Sarah began to realize Emma seemed to sense which items had potential, which ones were worth transforming. The apartment was filled with decades of collected junk, and suddenly Sarah understood why she'd been compelled to keep it all, why she'd never been able to throw anything away. It was as if some part of her had known this day would come, had known her daughter would need these materials. Sarah's mind raced with possibilities, but also with fears. What did this mean? How was it possible? Should she tell anyone? Would people believe her or think she was crazy? Would they try to take Emma away if they knew? She decided to keep it secret for now, to figure out what this gift meant and how to handle it safely. Sarah started researching online late at night after Emma went to sleep, looking up information about child prodigies, about unexplained abilities, about anything that might explain what her daughter could do, but she found nothing that matched, nothing that made sense. Meanwhile, the eviction deadline was approaching. They had 2 weeks left to prove the apartment was livable, and Sarah knew she had to make a choice. She could continue trying to clean and organize everything herself, an overwhelming task that might not be enough, or she could use Emma's gift, transform the most valuable items and sell them to solve their immediate financial crisis, maybe even hire professional help to clear the rest. The ethical implications weighed on her. Was it right to use her daughter's ability this way? Was it safe? Would it hurt Emma somehow? But Sarah also knew they were running out of options. They needed money, and they needed it fast. Sarah started small. She selected a few transformed items, the scarves and the vintage bowl and a pair of restored leather boots, and took them to an upscale consignment shop across town where nobody knew her. The shop owner examined the items with a jeweler's loupe and a careful eye, clearly impressed by the quality, and offered Sarah $300 on the spot, with the possibility of more if they sold quickly. Sarah accepted with shaking hands, more money than she'd seen at once in months, and walked out of the shop feeling like she'd crossed some invisible line. That night she sat Emma down and tried to explain in terms a 4-year-old could understand. "Sweetheart, that thing you do, when you touch things and make them pretty, it's very special, but it's also our secret, okay? We can't tell other people because they might not understand. They might want to take you away from Mommy." Emma nodded seriously. "Like a superhero secret?" Sarah smiled despite her anxiety. "Yes, exactly like that." Over the next week, Sarah carefully curated items for Emma to transform, focusing on things that would be valuable but not so extraordinary they'd raise suspicions: vintage clothing, antique items, quality leather goods, things that could believably have been well preserved or expertly restored. Emma seemed to enjoy it, treating it like a game. And Sarah noticed her daughter's ability was becoming more refined, more controlled, as if Emma was learning to focus her gift more precisely. The consignment shop called after 3 days. Everything had sold. They wanted more items. They had clients asking specifically about Sarah's collection. Sarah delivered another batch and this time negotiated a better percentage, walking away with nearly $800. For the first time in years, Sarah felt like she could breathe. She paid the overdue electric bill, bought groceries without counting every penny, and hired a junk removal service to clear the items that couldn't be transformed. The actual trash, and broken electronics and water-damaged boxes that even Emma's gift couldn't salvage. The apartment began to look different, with space to move, with surfaces visible. with light coming through windows that had been blocked by stacks of magazines. Mrs. Rodriguez came for an inspection and stood in the doorway looking shocked. "Mrs. Chen, this is remarkable. I honestly didn't think you could do it. The apartment looks completely different." Sarah felt a surge of pride mixed with guilt, knowing the transformation had only been possible because of Emma's gift, but also knowing she'd worked hard too, had finally let go of her compulsion to keep everything, had chosen her daughter's well-being over her collections. Jennifer came to visit and actually cried when she saw the apartment, hugging Sarah and saying, "I'm so proud of you. I know how hard this must have been." If only she knew the truth, Sarah thought. If only she understood that the hard part wasn't letting go, it was keeping the secret of how they'd managed it. Business at the consignment shop grew as word spread about the quality vintage items Sarah was providing, and the owner, a sharp woman named Diane, started asking questions about where Sarah found such pristine pieces. "I've been collecting for years," Sarah explained, which was true. "I'm finally ready to part with some things," which was partially true. Diane didn't push, but Sarah could tell she was curious, could tell the woman suspected there was more to the story. One afternoon, while Sarah was dropping off another batch of transformed items, a man in an expensive suit approached her in the consignment shop, introducing himself as Marcus Rothstein, a private dealer who specialized in rare vintage finds. "I've been buying your pieces through this shop," he said, "and I have to know, where are you sourcing these items? The condition is impossibly good. Some of these pieces look like they were made yesterday, but they're clearly decades old." Sarah's heart pounded. She'd been careful, but not careful enough. She'd gotten greedy, had let Emma transform too many items too perfectly. "Family collection," she said simply. "I'm very particular about storage." Marcus studied her face, clearly not entirely believing her, but intrigued. "I'd like to make you an offer. If you can provide me with regular inventory of this quality, I'll pay you double what you're getting here. I have clients who will pay premium prices for authenticated vintage items in pristine condition." Sarah knew she should say no, knew this was dangerous, but double the money meant security for Emma, meant a real savings account, meant maybe moving to a better apartment in a better neighborhood. "I'll think about it," she told Marcus, taking his business card. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep, tossing and turning while she weighed the risks against the rewards. If she took Marcus up on his offer, they'd have real financial stability, but they'd also be more visible, more exposed, more likely to be discovered. She thought about Emma's future, about the life she deserved, about opportunities Sarah could provide if they had money, good schools, music lessons, college savings, all the things Sarah had never been able to give her. The next morning, Emma woke up with a fever, nothing serious but enough that Sarah had to call in sick to work again, something she could barely afford to do. She spent the day taking care of Emma, bringing her water and children's medicine, reading her stories and watching her daughter sleep fitfully. In Emma's bedroom, away from all the collections and transformations, Sarah felt clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. This gift wasn't about money, it was about Emma, about keeping her safe and healthy and happy, and using her ability for profit felt wrong suddenly, felt like exploitation. Felt like exactly what Michael had accused her of doing with her collections, prioritizing things over people. When Emma woke up that evening, still warm with fever but smiling weakly, she said, "Mommy, I don't want to touch the old things anymore, it makes me tired." Sarah's stomach dropped. She'd been so focused on the opportunities Emma's gift provided that she hadn't considered it might have a cost, might be draining her daughter somehow. "Then you don't have to, baby," Sarah said immediately. "Not ever again if you don't want to. I'm so sorry I asked you to do it so much." Emma curled up in Sarah's arms. "But you said we needed to? Or the mean lady would make us leave?" Sarah felt tears burning her eyes, realizing how much pressure she'd put on her 4-year-old daughter, how she'd made Emma feel responsible for their housing situation, for their financial problems, for all the adult worries that should never have been a child's burden. "No, sweetheart, that's not your job. That's Mommy's job. You just need to be a kid and play and be happy, okay?" Emma nodded against Sarah's chest and fell back asleep, and Sarah made a decision. They'd stop. She'd stop using Emma's gift. She'd figure out another way to survive. The next day, Sarah called Marcus Rothstein and declined his offer. Then she called Diane at the consignment shop and said she wouldn't be bringing any more items. She was keeping the rest of her collection for sentimental reasons. Diane sounded disappointed but understanding, and Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders, even though she knew it meant going back to financial struggle. She picked up extra shifts at the grocery store, working nights after Emma was asleep and paying a neighbor teenager to sit in the apartment, working until her feet ached and her back screamed, but it was honest work. It was work that didn't depend on her daughter's mysterious gift. Weeks passed and Sarah slowly adjusted to their new normal. The apartment stayed clean because there wasn't money to buy unnecessary things anymore. Emma seemed happier and more energetic without the constant requests to transform items, and Sarah felt like maybe they were finally finding balance. She worked her shifts at the grocery store with renewed purpose, chatting with regular customers, helping elderly shoppers reach high shelves, and finding satisfaction in honest work that didn't depend on exploiting her daughter's mysterious gift. The night shifts were hardest, coming home after midnight to find the teenage neighbor asleep on their couch, carrying her exhausted body to Emma's room to check on her daughter sleeping peacefully, then collapsing into her own bed only to wake a few hours later to get Emma ready for daycare. Sarah's body ached constantly, her feet swollen from standing on concrete floors, her back protesting every time she bent to stock lower shelves. But she pushed through because this was what real mothers did. They sacrificed, they worked hard, they provided without taking shortcuts that put their children at risk. Emma started bringing home artwork from daycare, paintings of rainbows and houses and stick figure families, and Sarah displayed every single one on their refrigerator, creating a gallery that made their small kitchen feel more like home. The daycare teacher, Mrs. Patterson, mentioned that Emma was doing well socially, making friends easily, and showing particular interest in storytelling and pretend play, all normal, healthy childhood behaviors that filled Sarah with relief because it meant Emma was moving past the stress of their recent upheaval. Sarah joined a support group for single mothers at the community center, sitting in a circle of women who shared stories about juggling work and parenting, about financial struggles, about the loneliness of doing it all alone. And while Sarah couldn't share her full truth, she found comfort in the universal challenges they all faced, in knowing she wasn't alone even in her isolation. One woman named Patricia became a friend of sorts. They'd meet for coffee occasionally while their kids were in school, talking about everything from budgeting tips to dealing with difficult exes, and Patricia never pushed Sarah for details about her past, seemed to understand that everyone had stories they preferred to keep private. Then one Saturday morning there was a knock on the door. Sarah opened it to find Marcus Rothstein standing in the hallway looking urgent. "Mrs. Chen, I apologize for coming unannounced, but I need to speak with you, it's important." Sarah's first instinct was to close the door, but something in Marcus's expression made her hesitate. "What is it?" Marcus glanced around the hallway. "May I come in? This isn't a conversation for the corridor." Sarah reluctantly let him inside, grateful that Emma was at a playdate with a daycare friend, grateful the apartment was presentable. Marcus walked around the living room slowly, then turned to face her with an intense expression. "I know your secret, Mrs. Chen, or at least I know enough to understand that what you were selling me wasn't just well-preserved vintage items. Something else was happening, something impossible." Sarah's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you mean. I collected those things over years." Marcus shook his head. "I had some of the pieces analyzed by experts. The materials are vintage, but the condition is beyond preservation, beyond restoration. It's as if they were remade, restructured at a molecular level, and that's not possible. Except apparently it is." Sarah crossed her arms defensively. "If you're here to threaten me, to expose me, I don't have anything left to sell. I'm done with that business." Marcus held up his hands. "I'm not here to threaten you, I'm here to warn you, because I'm not the only one who noticed. There's a collector, a very wealthy and very dangerous man named Victor Kessler, who's been asking questions, who's been tracking the source of these impossibly restored items, and he has resources I don't have, resources that could put you and your daughter at risk." Sarah felt her legs go weak. "What kind of danger?" Marcus sat down on the couch without being invited. "Kessler doesn't just collect rare items, he collects rare abilities. He has people with gifts working for him, people who can do things that science can't explain. And he pays them well, but he also controls them completely. If he finds out about your daughter, he'll make you an offer you can't refuse, or he'll find another way to access her ability." Sarah's protective instincts flared. "He can't have her. I'll run, I'll disappear. I'll do whatever it takes." Marcus nodded. "I thought you might say that. which is why I'm offering you an alternative. I have connections to a network of people who help others with unusual situations. People who can relocate you safely, give you new identities, set you up somewhere Kessler can't find you. Sarah stared at him. Why would you help me? What do you want in return? Marcus met her eyes steadily. My daughter had a gift too. She could sense the history of objects just by touching them, could tell you everything about who owned them and what happened around them. Kessler found out about her when she was 12, made my ex-wife an offer that seemed generous at the time, promised to train our daughter and pay her well, but once she started working for him, she couldn't leave. He used her gift to authenticate stolen art and to gather blackmail material on his competitors. When she tried to quit, at 17, he threatened our whole family. She's 23 now, and still trapped working for him. I haven't seen her in person in 6 years. Sarah's heart ached for him. I'm sorry. That's terrible, but how do I know you're not working for him? How do I know this isn't a trap? Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of a young woman with sad eyes. That's Rebecca, my daughter. If I thought there was any way helping Kessler find more people like her would free her, I might do it. But I know better now. I know he just collects people with gifts like trophies. And I don't want that to happen to your daughter. I don't want another parent to go through what I went through. Sarah studied the photo, saw the genuine pain in Marcus's face, and made a decision. What do I need to do? Marcus explained the process. He'd connect them with a woman named Anna who specialized in helping people disappear. She'd arrange new documentation, a new city, a new life. They'd have to leave everything behind, including Sarah's job and Emma's daycare and any connections they had. But they'd be safe. The timeline was urgent. Marcus said Kessler's investigator had already been to the consignment shop asking questions. They had maybe a week before he tracked Sarah down. Sarah spent the next 3 days in a state of controlled panic, quietly packing only essentials, not telling anyone where they were going or why, lying to Jennifer and saying she'd gotten a job opportunity in another state, lying to Emma and saying they were going on a big adventure. Emma sensed her mother's stress and kept asking if something was wrong, if the mean lady was going to make them leave again, and Sarah had to keep reassuring her that everything would be okay, even though she wasn't sure that was true. On the 4th day, Anna showed up, a small woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient manner. She had new identification documents for both of them, new names. Sarah would become Jennifer Morrison, and Emma would become Sophie Morrison. They were moving to Portland, Oregon, where Anna had already secured them a small apartment, and Sarah had a job lined up at a bookstore through Anna's network. You'll need to cut your hair and dye it, Anna instructed Sarah. And Emma's too. Nothing dramatic, but enough that casual observers won't immediately recognize you from photos. Kessler has facial recognition software, but we can make it harder for him. That night, Sarah cut her long dark hair into a short bob and dyed it auburn, helped Emma transform her black pigtails into a shoulder-length brown style, and they both looked at themselves in the bathroom mirror like strangers. Emma started crying. I don't like it. I want to look like me. And Sarah cried too, holding her daughter and saying, I know, baby. I'm so sorry. But we have to do this to stay safe, to stay together. The next morning, they left before dawn, Anna driving them to the airport with instructions to never use their credit cards again, never access their old social media accounts, never contact anyone from their previous life. Sarah looked back at the apartment building as they drove away, at the place where she'd struggled and hoarded and finally learned to let go, at the home where Emma's gift had first revealed itself, and she felt grief mixed with relief. At the airport, Anna handed Sarah an envelope containing $5,000 in cash. This should tide you over until your first paycheck. Spend it carefully. Once it's gone, I can't send more without creating a trail. Sarah hugged Anna impulsively, thanking her, and Anna smiled. Thank Marcus. He's the one paying for all this. He's trying to save your daughter because he couldn't save his own. The flight to Portland was Emma's first time on a plane, and she pressed her face against the window watching the clouds, momentarily distracted from the strangeness of their situation, and Sarah tried to memorize her daughter's expression of wonder, tried to hold on to something beautiful in the middle of their upheaval. Portland was gray and rainy when they arrived, so different from their previous city, and the apartment Anna had arranged was small but clean and came furnished with basics: a couch that had seen better days, a kitchen table with mismatched chairs, beds with donated linens, everything second-hand but functional, everything a fresh start. Sarah and Emma spent their first week exploring the neighborhood, learning bus routes, finding the library and the grocery store, trying to build a new routine in this unfamiliar place where everything smelled different, sounded different, felt different. The rain was constant, a gentle, persistent drizzle that Emma found fascinating. She'd never seen so much rain before, and Sarah bought her a bright yellow raincoat and boots that made her daughter look like a tiny, optimistic beacon in the gray landscape. Emma started asking about her old friends from daycare, about when they could visit Aunt Jennifer, about why they had to leave all their toys behind, and Sarah had to keep deflecting, had to keep explaining that this was their home now, that they couldn't go back, that sometimes people had to start over and it was an adventure even if it felt scary. The lies tasted bitter in Sarah's mouth, but she told them anyway, because the truth, that they were running from a dangerous man who wanted to exploit Emma's gift, was too frightening for a 4-year-old to carry. The bookstore job was quiet and peaceful. Sarah shelved books and helped customers and tried to blend into her new identity as Jennifer Morrison, single mother, recent transplant from California. Nothing special, nothing worth noticing, just another person trying to make ends meet. The rhythm of work soothed her, organizing shelves and recommending titles to curious readers. Emma enrolled in a new preschool and seemed to adjust quickly, making new friends and bringing home artwork that Sarah hung on the refrigerator, trying to create normalcy and build a stable life. The teachers praised Emma's creativity and kindness, her ability to share and cooperate with other children. Months slowly passed and Sarah began to relax slightly, began to believe maybe they'd escaped, maybe Kessler would never find them. Maybe they could truly build a very real life in Portland. She allowed herself small pleasures, ice cream with Emma, an occasional book, brief moments of joy without the weight of constant fear pressing down on her chest. Then one afternoon, Sarah was working at the bookstore when a man in an expensive coat walked in, browsing the rare books section with an air of someone who owned everything he touched, and Sarah felt her stomach drop even before he approached the counter. "I'm looking for a first edition Hemingway," the man said, his accent vaguely European, his eyes cold and calculating. "Something in exceptional condition. Do you have anything like that?" Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she checked the computer system. "We have a few Hemingway first editions, but they're in typical vintage condition. Some wear, some foxing, nothing pristine." The man smiled. "Pity. I've been looking for impossibly pristine vintage items. I had a source for a while, but she disappeared. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you, Jennifer?" Sarah's blood turned to ice. He knew her new name, which meant he knew everything, which meant they'd never really escaped at all. "I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. The man leaned on the counter. "Let me be direct, Mrs. Chen, or should I say Mrs. Morrison. My name is Victor Kessler, and I've spent considerable resources finding you. I know about your daughter's remarkable gift, and I'm prepared to make you an offer that will change both your lives. A very generous offer." Sarah looked around the bookstore, several customers browsing, her manager in the back office, nowhere to run. "I'm not interested in any offers. Please leave me alone." Kessler's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm offering you $1 million for a 1-year contract. Your daughter works with me, restoring valuable items, and you both live in luxury. After the year, you're free to go with your earnings, and I never contact you again. It's an opportunity most people would kill for." Sarah shook her head. "My daughter is 4 years old. She's not working for anyone. We're not interested." Kessler's expression hardened. "I understand maternal protectiveness. Admirable, really. But consider the alternative. I could make your life very difficult. I could expose your fake identities, alert authorities to various irregularities in your documentation, make it impossible for you to work or keep custody of your daughter, or you could accept my generous offer and set both of you up financially for life." Sarah felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. "You can't force me. You can't take her." Kessler straightened up. "You have 24 hours to think about it. I'll be staying at the Heathman Hotel, room 412. I hope you'll make the smart choice, Mrs. Chen, for your daughter's sake." He left the bookstore, and Sarah immediately pulled out her phone to call Marcus, but the number he'd given her was disconnected. She tried Anna next, but that number just rang endlessly. She was alone, trapped, and running out of options. Sarah left work early claiming illness, picked up Emma from preschool and held her daughter's hand too tightly on the walk home, trying to figure out what to do. They couldn't run again. Kessler had found them once and would find them again. They couldn't fight him legally. They had no resources and fake identities that wouldn't hold up to scrutiny, and they couldn't just ignore him. He'd proven he would follow through on threats. That evening after Emma went to sleep, Sarah sat at their small kitchen table and cried harder than she'd cried since Michael left, feeling helpless and furious and terrified. She thought about Emma's gift, about how it had seemed like a blessing at first, a way to solve their problems, but had become a curse that painted a target on her daughter's back. She thought about all the time she'd used Emma's ability for their own benefit, how she'd rationalized it as necessary, as survival, as not that different from any parent asking their talented child to contribute to the family, but now seeing how it had led them here, to being hunted by a dangerous man, she understood the true cost. Around midnight, Sarah's phone rang, an unknown number, and she almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Mrs. Chen, it's Rebecca Rothstein, Marcus's daughter." The voice on the other end was young and scared. "My father asked me to watch for your name in Kessler's files, to warn you if he found you. I'm so sorry he did. I'm so sorry I couldn't stop it." Sarah's heart raced. "Can you help us? Is there any way out of this?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Kessler's power comes from having leverage, from knowing things about people they don't want exposed. If you can find something he wants to keep hidden, something that would hurt him if it went public, you might be able to negotiate. But it's risky. He's destroyed people who've tried to blackmail him." Sarah felt a desperate hope. "What kind of information? Where would I even find it?" Rebecca lowered her voice. "He keeps files on everyone who works for him. Insurance, he calls it. Details about our abilities and our families, and his leverage over us. If those files went public, it would expose his entire operation. He has people working for him who do things that would interest law enforcement, including me authenticating stolen art. The files are in a safe in his hotel room. Combination is his daughter's birthday backwards, month, day, year. If you can get them, you might be able to bargain." Sarah's mind spun. His daughter's birthday? How do I find that? Rebecca gave her a date. "But Mrs. Chen, if you do this, if you cross him, there's no going back. You need to be absolutely certain." Sarah thought about Emma sleeping in the next room, about the life her daughter deserved, about breaking free from this nightmare once and for all. "I'm certain. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for risking this." They hung up, and Sarah spent the rest of the night planning. She found a neighbor willing to watch Emma for a few hours the next morning, claiming she had an important appointment. Then she steeled her nerves and headed to the Heathman Hotel. Getting into Kessler's room required creativity. Sarah waited until she saw him leave for breakfast, then approached housekeeping with a story about being his assistant and needing to retrieve an important document he'd forgotten. The housekeeper was skeptical until Sarah slipped her $50 from her dwindling cash. Then suddenly the woman had a break she could take while Sarah was in the room. Sarah's hands shook as she searched for the safe, finding it in the closet behind hanging suits. The combination lock mocked her with its numbers, and Sarah tried the birthday Rebecca had given her backwards, month, day, year, and the safe clicked open. Inside were folders, dozens of them, each labeled with a name. Sarah grabbed the entire stack along with several USB drives, stuffed them in her bag, and got out of the room before her luck ran out. Back home, Sarah spread the files across her kitchen table and began reading, her horror growing with each page. Kessler had detailed documentation of at least 20 people with unusual abilities. Everything from Rebecca's object reading, to someone who could influence emotional states, to a teenager who could temporarily enhance the properties of materials. The files included personal information about each person, about their families, about the leverage Kessler held over them, and evidence of the illegal work they'd done for him. It was a treasure trove of criminal activity and exploitation. Sarah photographed every page with her phone, uploaded the images to a cloud storage account, then called the number Kessler had left her. "Mr. Kessler, this is Sarah Chen. I've reconsidered your offer. I'd like to meet and discuss terms," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Kessler agreed to meet that afternoon at a coffee shop, neutral territory, and Sarah arrived early, chose a table in the center where they'd be visible, and waited with her heart pounding. When Kessler sat down across from her, he looked pleased. "I'm glad you've come to your senses. Shall we discuss the contract?" Sarah pulled out a folder, one of his files, and slid it across the table. "I think we should discuss this instead. I have copies of all your files, all the evidence of your operation, all the names and abilities and illegal activities, and I've uploaded it somewhere safe, where it will be automatically released to law enforcement and media if anything happens to me or my daughter." Kessler's face went from pleased to furious in seconds. "You broke into my room. You stole my property. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Sarah leaned forward. "I've done what I needed to do to protect my child, and now here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave us alone permanently. You're going to stop tracking us and stop making offers and stop threatening us, and in exchange I won't release these files. I won't expose your entire operation and send you to prison." Kessler's jaw clenched. "You're making a serious mistake. I have lawyers. I have resources. I can destroy you." Sarah shook her head. "Maybe you can, but not before those files go public. Not before everyone in them gets freed and you lose everything you've built. So the question is whether your pride is worth that cost." They stared at each other across the table, and Sarah saw the moment Kessler realized she was serious, realized she had nothing left to lose and everything to gain, realized that for once he wasn't the one with all the power. "Fine," he said finally. "I'll leave you alone, but if you ever use those files, if you ever release that information, the deal is off, and I will hunt you down." Sarah nodded. "Agreed. As long as you honor your side, the files stay hidden." Kessler stood up and walked out without another word, and Sarah sat there shaking, barely believing what she'd just done, barely believing it had worked. Over the following weeks, Sarah waited for retaliation that never came, gradually beginning to believe they were actually free, actually safe. She received a message from Marcus through an encrypted app. Rebecca had told him what happened, and he was grateful. Said if Sarah was willing, he'd like to use copies of those files to help free his daughter and the others. And Sarah agreed, knowing it was risky, but feeling responsible for the people trapped in Kessler's operation. 3 months later, Rebecca Rothstein walked away from Kessler with several others, armed with legal representation funded anonymously by Marcus, and Kessler didn't stop them because he knew fighting would mean exposure. Sarah and Emma stayed in Portland and gradually built a real life. Emma never transformed another object, never needed to, never asked to, and Sarah was grateful because her daughter could just be a child, could just grow up without the weight of an extraordinary gift being exploited. Years later, when Emma was 10, she asked her mother about the time they'd run away, about the man who'd scared them, about why they'd had to change their names. And Sarah told her the truth, told her about the gift she'd had as a child, about the danger it had brought, about the choice Sarah had made to protect her, even if it meant they could never go back to their old life. Emma listened quietly, then said, "Do you think I could still do it? Transform things?" Sarah stroked her daughter's hair. "Maybe, but you don't have to. You never have to use that gift if you don't want to. It's yours to choose." Emma thought about it, then smiled. "I think I'll just keep it as a secret, like a superhero, just in case we ever really need it." Sarah hugged her daughter. "That sounds perfect, sweetheart." And she meant it, because the real gift wasn't Emma's ability to transform objects. It was the strength they'd both found to transform their lives, to choose safety over profit, to choose each other over everything else. And that was the kind of magic that would last forever.